I thought I'd already faced the worst life could throw at me, losing my father to suicide at 12, surviving an abusive marriage, and two devastating wrecks that shattered my body and spirit. Then came the night my car tumbled 216 feet off the road, water seeping through the windshield as I slipped into darkness. I hovered above the wreckage, watching my broken self trapped below, until a radiant presence asked, "Do you see now?" This is the moment that forced me to choose between endless peace and returning to finish my story. After surviving my father's suicide at 12 and an abusive childhood, I then endured two horrific car wrecks that left me broken and isolated. Yet, none of it prepared me for the night I rolled 216 feet off the road. I never saw the light approaching. I grew up in a house where peace never lived. My mother's rage flared like wildfire, scorching every corner of my childhood, while my father's smile grew dim year by year until, when I was 12, he walked into the night and never returned. I woke the next morning to strangers in our kitchen, telling me he was gone, gone by his own hand, and I understood that life could fracture without warning. In the years since, I learned fear and loss more intimately than I learned love or safety. By my 20s, I'd stumbled into an abusive marriage of my own, a relationship where every apology was a promise destined to shatter. I clung to my two small children as lifelines, even as the walls of home echoed with threats and slammed doors. I found work driving long hours, grateful at least for the distraction of open roads. And yet, trauma shadowed me. The memory of my father's last letter, my mother's trembling hands, the sting of every insult I swallowed in silence. In April 2015, life's cruelty took a new shape. A deer, huge, wild, exploded through my windshield one dusk, its antlers ripping my face, my head, and my spine in one harrowing instant. I woke in a hospital bed, my world fractured into steel rods in my spine and a brain clouded by trauma. Surgeons fused my vertebrae together, while speech therapists coaxed words back to life from my battered mind. I learned to smile again with prosthetic teeth, to sit upright with rods through my back, and to swallow fear by the spoonful. Barely months later, on my first day back at work, calamity struck once more. A hauling truck's rear axle snapped off its chassis, hurtling across the median and smashing into my car. Metal crumpled like paper. My body shattered again, demanding fresh surgeries and plunging me into a spiral of pain I'd never known. Through it all, I carried my children in my heart, tiny faces in phone screens, reminding me that I could not give up. Friends and strangers alike urged me to find solace in churches, invitations to Sunday services, whispered prayers over my shoulder, holy pamphlets slipped into my purse. I resisted, wounded by betrayal and loss, yet I always sensed a quiet presence beside me, a guiding hand I could neither see nor name, urging me toward something beyond my battered flesh. Then came July 2016. The summer air lay heavy as I drove home from work, spine fused but spirit frayed. A car cut me off, forcing me onto the shoulder. My tires clipped the verge, and my world tilted. I rolled, 216 feet of metallic agony, slamming into a culvert, then another 216 feet before coming to rest upside down, windshield tapping my cheek with every gasp of water. My right arm dangled useless. My ribs screamed. My leg hung at an impossible angle. That was the last breath I took in the realm I knew. As water seeped in and pain threatened to eclipse consciousness, I slipped free of flesh. I hovered above the crumpled steel, watching my broken body trapped beneath the glass. Then I saw it. An immense light in the shape of a being without features, luminous and alive. My grandmother's gentle eyes and my father's steady presence emerged beside it, guiding my gaze to a vast wheel of memory unspooling, my life in slow motion, every sorrow and every spark of hope. In that silent expanse, the light being asked telepathically, "Do you see now?" Warmth filled me, peace unlike any I'd known. Fear and longing tangled inside me. I did not want to return to pain, to the mother who slapped and the memories that haunted. Yet as the vision swept me past failures and exaltations, I sensed the fragile faces of my children waiting, the tiny hands needing mine. A force gentler than gravity tugged me back. The light faded and I crashed through the atmosphere of oblivion, back into shuddering breath, reeling pain, and the sterile glare of an operating room. A doctor's voice cut through my haze. "I have no explanation for how you survived." And in that moment of awakening, with rods in my spine and unanswered questions in my heart, I understood that survival itself had a purpose. Though my body lay fractured, my spirit had been carried through death's door, and now my arduous journey would become the light I carried forward. My car tumbled 216 feet off the road, coming to rest upside down in the culvert as water seeped through the shattered windshield. Pain erupted, then a profound silence enveloped me as I floated above the wreckage. My evening drive home began like any other, spine still tender from 2 prior wrecks, but heart set on seeing my children. The desert shadows stretched long beneath a bruised sunset as I rounded a gentle curve outside town. Then a flash of metal in my mirror. Another car. Too close. Too fast. Before I could react, the wheel jerked in my hands. My car veered off the asphalt, tires churned gravel, and the world flipped. I remember the scream of tearing metal as the passenger door crumpled inward. My head snapped against tempered glass, crack, bone rattling. The sound of crunching steel rose and fell in grotesque rhythm as my car somersaulted, tumbling head over heels down into a hidden drainage culvert. I counted revolutions in slow motion. 1, 2, 3, until the tires ground to a halt against jagged concrete and the world pitched upside down. Pain bloomed immediately, white-hot agony shattering every rib on my right side, my right leg wrenching at an impossible angle, the familiar ache in my spine crowned by fresh trauma. Water, icy and merciless, surged past my cheek through the fractured windshield. It hissed against my skin as if mocking my attempts to breathe. My seatbelt bit into my shoulder, holding me tight as gravity reversed and then reclaimed me. My breath caught in a cruel twist. The first inhale felt like glass shards in my lungs. The next was nothing. My hands darted across the dashboard, fingertips brushing shattered shards of glass and blood-slick metal. I tried to yank the seatbelt free, but a lightning bolt of pain lanced through my torso, and my fingers curled in impotent agony. Darkness edged my vision as water rose around my face. I blinked, tasted rust and salt, and felt the world narrow to the pulse in my temples. Then the ride stopped. The roar of water and the crash of metal faded to a distant echo. My consciousness hovered in a silent bubble, 3 feet above the wreckage, looking down at my mangled car as though through the eyes of a stranger. I could see the creak of broken bodies of metal, the slurry of sand and oil pooling at the bottom. My own body lay crumpled, a shattered mannequin, limbs useless, flesh bleeding into water. I was aware of every fracture, the pre-existing fusions in my spine shifting like old scars reopening alongside the new breaks. Fear should have bloomed then, but it did not. Instead, I felt a profound calm suffuse me. The wind-whipped hiss of the sandstorm outside was gone. The sterile, antiseptic terror that had marked every hospital recovery vanished. In its place was nothingness, pure, boundless stillness that felt like floating on the surface of an infinite ocean. As I drifted, a soft glow gathered before me. It took shape slowly, A radiant, featureless figure formed of warm, golden light. Behind it, two more presences emerged, my grandmother's gentle eyes and my father's solemn smile, both lost to me for decades. They stood on each side of that luminous being, guardians at the edge of two worlds. Then I beheld a wheel, vast, spinning slowly, its rim etched with the moments of my life, childhood nightmares of my mother's outbursts, the hollow anguish of my father's funeral, the bitterness of abusive days and lonely nights, the violence of the deer's antlers and the truck's crushing bulk. I saw every hospital bed and every tear I'd shed before doctors and therapists who could soothe bones and speech, but never the emptiness inside. From the light being came a sound, not a word, but a telepathic echo that reverberated through my mind. Do you see now? Warmth bloomed where fear should have been. I understood at once that this wasn't judgment but revelation. Every fracture and every scar had woven me into this moment of choice. I sensed the vast potential behind their question, the chance to embrace peace or to return, armed with new insight. I felt tears in my disembodied eyes as I whispered back, I don't want to go back. In that pure expanse, I tasted the relief of unbroken silence, the serenity of dissolution. And yet, even as peace beckoned, another impulse flickered. The ache of motherhood, the tiny hands waiting for me, the battered faith I'd clung to through every storm. Behind the light figure, a darker shimmer lay. All those I still had to love, the children I must hold again, the sisters and brothers I had yet to help. Love and duty tugged at me with the force of gravity. Then the voice pulsed again, stronger, more insistent. Will you return? The glow around me shivered, threads of radiant energy weaving a bridge between realms. I felt a shudder run through my essence, choice crystallizing into clarity. My fractured spine, my bruised heart, my wounded soul all called me back, beckoned me to life's unfinished tapestry. A final surge of that golden warmth flooded my senses. The silence snapped, an elastic pop, and I hurtled downward, gravity reclaiming me with jarring force. Pain roared back in a white-hot wave as blood rushed to every nerve ending. My lungs screamed for air. I gasped, eyes snapping open to a tableau of hands and halos of headlamps, the officer's frantic face bent close. Stay with us. The world crashed back into motion, the gendarmerie guard prying the door, medics clamping oxygen masks, sirens screaming back to life. I clutched at phantom currents as they lifted me onto a gurney. And in that wild, sacred shock of return, agony and relief entwined, I understood. I had been shown that pain was my purpose, and now I would carry that purpose back into the realm of suffering and salvation. My battered body went still, and then I floated free of pain, ascending above the crushing wreckage as the roar of metal and rushing water receded into an all-encompassing, humming silence. I hovered in a realm of soft gray that seemed to pulse with life's own heartbeat. Below me lay the twisted orange shell of my car, half submerged in sand-streaked water, its roof pressed into the culvert like the lid of a coffin. My body, fractured and bleeding, lay inside, ribs splayed, spine fused and refused by rods, limbs grotesquely bent. Yet I felt no pain. The fierce agony that had shattered me moments before was gone, replaced by a hushed stillness so profound it roared in my ears. Around me, the howling storm and the crash of metal receded to indistinct echoes, footsteps and shouted orders. Get help! Ambulance coming! Drifted up like distant songs, but they could not breach the barrier of silence. I watched my own reflection on the underbelly of the wreck, saw my face streaked with blood and sand, and recognized the me I had left behind. A mother, a survivor, a soul battered yet still breathing. Then came the light. It appeared at the horizon of my vision, a soft glow, neither white nor gold but alive, as if forged from the sunrise itself. It pulsed in gentle waves, and with each surge I felt a warm current seep into my drifting form, as though I were being wrapped in molten comfort. Below the glow, the desolate culvert dissolved into nothingness. Above it, the gray expanse thinned, revealing threads of radiant color weaving through the void. I drifted toward the glow, guided by an instinct older than thought. In that motion, my memories surfaced in brilliant clarity. I saw my father's smile before he vanished, the weight of his final goodbye pressed into my 12-year-old heart. I felt my mother's spite, sharp as glass, carving its shape into every fear I would ever know. I remembered the deer's antlers tearing through glass, the deer's confused eyes reflecting my own shock. I recalled the hauling truck's roar, the jolt that bent metal and spirit alike. Each memory flickered like a projector. No judgment, only raw moments laid bare. They wove together into a tapestry of suffering and endurance, revealing how every heartbreak had prepared me for this reckoning. The light expanded into a dome of living flame, its surface rippling with motion. As I approached, I discerned a presence at its center, not a person, but a knowing consciousness. The light being I had glimpsed above the wreck, now fully revealed as a field of compassionate awareness. In its pure gaze, I felt no shame, only acceptance. A vibration thrummed through the dome, syncing with my own heartbeat, reminding me that suffering and grace were facets of the same jewel. Suddenly, two figures emerged at the glow's edge, my grandmother, with eyes soft as sunset, and my father, strong and steady as the desert dawn. They stood silently, their hands folded, embodying the love and loss that had shaped my life. Behind them, the vast wheel of my memories rotated slowly, illuminating new facets of each scene. The moments I had despaired, the moments I had dared hope, and the moments of fierce determination that had kept me alive. Then the voice spoke, not in words I heard, but in truths I felt. Do you see now? Your pain has been your purpose. Warmth surged through me. I felt my own essence ignite with understanding. Every wound, every tear, every fracture had not broken me beyond repair, but had forged me into a vessel of light. Strength born of suffering now coursed through my soul. In that silent communion, I sensed an invitation, not simply to remain in this sanctuary of peace, but to carry its power back into the world of challenge and change. The light being's presence radiated promise. Those who shepherded me home, the rescuers, the responders, the physicians, were threads in a living tapestry, each to be honored and multiplied. A deeper vibration thrummed beneath the first voice, and another message resonated. It is not your time. You still have work to do. The words rippled through the dome like ripples across a pond. I realized that though I floated in a realm beyond pain, my true mission lay in returning, to mend, to teach, to love, to help others cross their own thresholds. At that summons, the glowing dome contracted gently, folding inward like a closing flower. The hum softened to a single note, then faded to silence. The gray expanse shivered and gave way to weight, a force pulling me downward with inexorable grace. I fell through the boundary of oblivion into the roar of rushing water and the clash of metal once more. My body seized with the import of return. Pain erupted in every rib and rod, each nerve alight with the electric shock of life reclaimed. I gasped, the taste of salt and blood filling my mouth, and my lungs flared as they haunted me back. Hands seized my shoulders, shaking me as the first responders broke through my cocoon of numbness. "Stay with us!" they cried, pressing oxygen masks to my face. The thunder of the storm was sudden again, the wind lashing, the sirens wailing, the gravel crunching beneath hurried boots. As I lay back on the stretcher, consciousness flickering, I felt the echo of that dome's light pulsate within me, a secret flame of purpose no fracture could ever extinguish. In that sacred shock of return, I knew I carried within my broken flesh the living promise of resilience and grace. And though my journey was far from over, I had seen beyond the brink and chosen to come home. Hovering within that living dome of light, my grandmother's gentle eyes and my father's solemn presence flanked a featureless being of pure radiance. Then a voice resonated. Do you see now? Your pain has been your purpose. Drawn by the thrum of light, I drifted through the pale gray expanse toward the radiant core. The dome's edges pulsed in waves of honey and rose, each beat a soft drum of compassion. As I approached, the dome's warmth poured over me like liquid sunlight, washing away the last tremors of fear. In that glow, I saw my grandmother, her face serene, lined with years of quiet sacrifice, and my father, whose shoulders stood straighter here than in memory. Between them hovered the featureless figure, an avatar of pure awareness, backlit in brilliance. No words passed between us. Communication was a tapestry of feeling and image woven directly into my mind. I recognized in the light being an intelligence beyond flesh, a presence older than time, neither male nor female, yet suffused with the tenderness of a parent's embrace. In its silent gaze, every wound I'd ever borne, my mother's cruelty, my father's absence, the deer's antlers, the truck's metal, transformed from burdens into threads of a greater design. Then the voice came, not spoken but resonant within every cell. Do you see now? Your pain has been your purpose. The words unfurled in me like petals of revelation. I felt the weight of every surgery, every therapy session, every echo of violence and loss crystallize into meaning. My identity, once splintered by trauma, reknit itself into a tapestry of resilience and compassion. I understood that each fracture was not a mark of defeat, but a badge of initiation, a forging that prepared me to carry light into darkness. Behind the presence, the wheel of my life spun slowly, each spoke representing a pivotal moment. The 12-year-old child at my father's graveside, trembling with hopelessness, the terrified mother shielding her infants from domestic fury, the startled driver cradling a shattered deer, the survivor gasping for breath after my second wreck, the woman rolling helplessly in the culvert. Each memory glowed as a fragment of wisdom, illuminating why I must live on. In that tapestry of light and memory, another message emerged, this time deeper, firmer, yet gentle as a promise. It is not your time. You still have work to do. Images cascaded in response. Scenes of hospital corridors where emergency staff learn new protocols from my story. Classrooms in the hotel training guests in desert safety. Gatherings of mothers and children finding solace in my advocacy. Lonely souls anchored by the example of one who endured beyond all odds. I saw faces I would comfort, hands I would hold, and that unbroken chain of care that stretches from one life to another. My heart, if such a thing could be said of a disembodied core, expanded with purpose. The light being's radiance wove itself into the core of my essence, encoding within me the charge to carry this dome of protection wherever pain threatened to overwhelm. I felt a surge of gratitude so immense that it shook the dome with ripples of pure emotion. In the periphery, my grandmother and father smiled, hers a soft benediction, his a proud nod of solidarity. Their presence affirmed that I walked upon a path laid by those who loved me beyond the veil. No longer was I alone. I was part of a lineage of souls who had risen from suffering to serve. Then, with the dome's light beaming its final benediction, the edge of the expanse shuddered and drew inward like a blossoming flower at dusk. The hum fell to a whisper, threads of golden light retracting to a single point. The silence that followed was not emptiness, but the pregnant pause before dawn. I felt the pull of life reclaiming me. The dome's warmth condensed to a pinpoint above my crown, then vanished. The hushed expanse dissolved, and I began to fall, first gently, then with increasing speed through the boundary between worlds. The hush snapped into a roar as gravity slammed into my limbs. Pain flooded every nerve, white-hot agony as flesh and bone reawakened to their brokenness. I gasped, lungs searing with each breath as the scream of the car's engine and the wail of sirens exploded back into my ears. Hands seized my shoulders, shaking me. "Stay with us." A faceless medic pressed an oxygen mask to my mouth. I choked, tasting the hospital air's antiseptic bite, then clutched at the echo of the light being's final words, "Your pain is purpose." As consciousness flooded back, the surgeon's hurried commands and the harsh glare of operating lights solidified around me. I felt the weight of purpose settle into my bones, the unbreakable promise that though I had returned to flesh, I carried within me an uncompromising spark of light. In that fierce, sacred shock of return, I knew my journey was no longer merely survival. It was a mission of compassion, resilience, and service, born from the very fractures that had once threatened to end me. The luminous dome dissolved, and I instantly felt gravity reclaim me with brutal force. Agony surged back in a searing wave, alarms blared as if to announce my return, and hands jarred me awake amidst a whirlwind of sirens and frantic movement. My first breath was a knife's edge tearing through every fractured rib. The hush of the gray expanse snapped into a cacophony, tires skidding on gravel, sirens wailing in rapid fire, voices shouting in urgent French. Pain flared beneath my back, old fusions shifting, new brakes detonating, while my lungs roared, desperate for air. I gasped and found myself crumpled in the gendarmerie's rear seat, head lolling against a blood-soaked cushion. Hands, hard, gloved, insistent, pried me upright. A masked medic pressed an oxygen mask to my face, the hiss of compressed air a brutal salvation. "Respirez! Respirez!" The officer's eyes burned with relief as he braced the wheel with one hand and reached back with the other. "Vous êtes de retour," he panted. "You're back." I coughed, tasting copper and dust as the wind whipped sand through broken glass. My body felt alien, each limb a conduit of agony. I tried to nod, but my head spun on a pendulum of pain. The culvert and the storm outside reassembled in my vision, the twisted orange shell of my car, water sluicing through shattered glass, the culvert's hard concrete sides closing me in. And above it all had been that dome of living light, gone now, leaving only its echo in my marrow. The car lurched onto firmer ground, the guard opened the rear door, and I felt the cold night air strike my chest like a slap. A stretcher slid beneath me, and I was lifted again, this time into an ambulance's fluorescent glare. The change was dizzying. One moment the world had hung suspended in golden calm. The next I was strapped between metal rails, surrounded by paramedics barking orders. Pain surged as they eased me onto the stretcher's rigid board, blankets fluttering like trapped wings. A thermometer's probe pressed against my skin. An IV line in my arm dropped cold fluid into my veins. I heard the snap of gloves, the rustle of radio static, the pulse of the EKG beeps finding a rhythm. My eyes flickered across helmeted EMTs, their faces taut with concentration. "Cardiac status is stable," a paramedic reported. "BP is rising." A nurse pressed a fingertip to my wrist, counting my pulse. I felt a spark of triumph. My heart, my battered, breakable heart, had roared back to life. The ambulance jolted into motion, sirens flaring. Through the rear window, I glimpsed desert stars swallowing the edges of headlights. My breath came in ragged fits, each inhalation stitching me back into flesh. I closed my eyes against the blur of motion, clutching at the memory of that dome's question. Do you see now? And the command that had summoned me home. It is not your time. Pulse lights danced across my vision as we barreled toward the hospital. I felt the gravity of my return, my fractured body tethered once more to a world that still needed me. The siren's cry faded behind walls of concrete and glass as we crossed the threshold into emergency. Paramedics lifted me through swinging doors into a maelstrom of motion, nurses grasping charts, doctors slipping on gloves, monitors chirping. I smelled antiseptic and adrenaline. A trauma surgeon crouched beside me, her eyes sharp. "Spinal precautions," she ordered, voice calm but urgent. The team swaddled me in a vacuum mattress, securing every limb. I felt the snap of equipment as each strap locked me into the protocol that would save me. A blur of hallways later, I lay on an operating table beneath a blinding array of lights. Surgeons hovered, their scalpel tips catching gleams. I heard them discuss rods and fusions, rib belts and drainage tubes. My world had narrowed to the hiss of oxygen and the white-hot flare of pain at every shift of my body. But beneath it all, an ember glowed, the knowledge that I had chosen to return, that each stitch and screw would bind me not only to flesh, but to purpose. As anesthesiologists leaned in, I caught one surgeon's eye. He gave a small nod, and though he was a man of science, I saw in his look a flicker of wonder, an echo of the inexplicable light I had witnessed. Then darkness claimed me again, gentler this time, as they carried me toward healing. In that brutal jolt of return, where agony and aliveness collided, I carried the light's promise within me, that suffering could forge strength, that every fracture could become a conduit of compassion, and that I had been granted a second turning in life's story. When I awoke in recovery, wounds seeping and spirit steadied, I would know I had come back not only to live, but to illuminate the path for others teetering on the brink. Waking from a 24-hour coma, I was met with such excruciating pain, I thought my body might simply fracture. Yet, deep beneath that agony, lay a profound certainty. I'd been ushered beyond death's veil and granted a purpose extending far beyond mere survival. I came to in the sterile hush of the trauma ward, each mechanical beep a lifeline tethering me to the world I had almost left. A nasogastric tube curled down my throat, and IV lines dripped cold relief into my veins. My body felt like a cracked vessel, every movement a cascade of agony, ribs protesting each breath, my right leg cradled in a brace of metal rods, and the familiar weight of spinal fusions pressing through my back. Tears blurred my vision as I tried to summon the strength to turn my head. A nurse noticed and pressed a cool cloth against my brow. "You're safe now," she whispered. I nodded against the ache, tasting antiseptic on my tongue, and found myself smiling through the pain, a smile born not of relief alone, but of profound gratitude. When my children and sister filed into the room, faces drawn, eyes wary, I felt both shame and elation. Shame that they had witnessed yet another catastrophe spawned by my battered life, and elation that they still stood by me. My daughter slipped her hand into mine. My son pressed a stuffed tiger against my chest. In their quiet presence, I found the anchor that had called me back. Over the following weeks, my recovery became a mosaic of small victories and relentless setbacks. Physical therapy was a battlefield. I learned to sit unassisted, to flex my toes, to shift my weight onto a walker. Each inch of progress standing for 5 seconds, taking 20 steps, felt like reclaiming a universe of possibility. At night, when phantom pain echoed spine and ribs, I whispered the question that had guided me through the light. "Do you see now?" And allowed its answer, purpose, to steady my soul. I mapped out a new daily ritual: dawn breathwork to soothe achy lungs, midday prayers of gratitude for every breath, evening journals where I let the raw edges of fear and hope bleed together on paper. Painkillers left my system. Instead, I reached for ice packs, gentle stretches, and the companionable hum of support group calls. Friends I'd never known rallied around me, a fellow survivor who shared tips on adaptive driving, a pastor who delivered meals and gentle scripture, a neighbor I'd barely met who sat by my bedside when sleep eluded me. 7 months later, I returned to the desert road where I had rolled. The culvert yawned silent beneath the moon, and I stood on the shoulder with a single candle. I whispered thanks to the girl in light, to my grandmother and father at her side, and to whatever force had cradled me in that dome of radiant purpose. The candle's flame trembled in the wind, but I felt no fear, only the promise of every dawn I had yet to see. In my small town, I founded Wreck to Rise, a support network for women who had survived violence and trauma. We met in a dusty community hall, mothers with burned-out stares, daughters carrying inheritance of pain, and one former nurse whose gentle hands showed me how to lean into healing rather than fight against it. I shared my story, of fractured bones and fractured faith, of the living dome of light and the command to return, and they wept and nodded, recognizing their own shadows within mine. Together, we built workshops in local clinics teaching first responders about the tender edges of trauma, how to honor survivors' stories rather than merely treat their wounds. We partnered with the Road Commission to install additional guardrails and emergency call boxes along the high-risk corridors. We hosted candlelit vigils on the anniversary of each woman's return, a celebration of life forged in the crucible of suffering. Even now, 17 surgeries later, pain is my companion. It flares in random storms, a stiff rib at dawn, a jolting spasm in my spine at dusk. But each flare is a reminder of that luminous question, "Do you see now?" and of the purpose woven into every broken fragment of my story. Each morning I wake in gratitude for the hands that guided me back, for the faces that pressed theirs against mine when I gasped alive, and for the light that carried me through the abyss. I rise, slow, cautious, determined, and in every step I carry within me the proof that suffering is not a curse, but a calling, to guide others by the warmth of the dome I once called home.
Hello, everyone. I'm the creator of this channel. Thank you so much for watching. Your support means everything. Please hit the like button, subscribe for more stories, and share your own experiences in the comments below. Remember, God watches over you, and every day is a gift. May your life be filled with blessings.